Lewis Hamilton missed pole position in Hungary by only 12 thousandths of a second. Then, moments later, the FIA opened a formal investigation that could cost him his place on the front row. The reason was not an illegal Ferrari. It was not a technical failure. It was a moment at turn 1 involving Oscar Piastri, a slow-moving Hamilton, and a closing speed so dangerous that Piastri said he nearly hit him. Hamilton insists he had no idea the McLaren was coming. Piastri says he saw Hamilton from the start line, expected him to move, and watched the gap disappear until contact was almost unavoidable. Now the stewards must decide who is responsible, and if they rule against Hamilton, the lap that placed him only 12 thousandths behind Lando Norris may become almost meaningless. Subscribe to the channel, because one late radio warning could completely reshape the Hungarian Grand Prix. The tension began at the start of the final qualifying runs. Every driver knew there was almost no margin left. Lando Norris had produced a lap of 1 minute, 17.207 seconds. Hamilton was close enough to challenge him. Ferrari had already shown serious speed throughout the weekend. Hamilton had topped the second practice session with a lap of 1 minute, 18.729 seconds, and he arrived in Hungary carrying momentum after his victory in Barcelona. Everything pointed toward a direct fight for pole, and that fight became almost impossibly close. Hamilton completed his final qualifying effort and finished second. The gap to Norris was 12 thousandths of a second. That is less time than the human eye needs to react. One cleaner exit could have reversed the result. One tiny steering correction could have changed the front row. One fractionally earlier press of the accelerator could have placed Hamilton on pole. But while attention moved toward the timing screen, another story was already developing behind him. Oscar Piastri was beginning his decisive final attempt. Hamilton was moving slowly through turn 1, and the two cars were about to arrive at the same point with completely different expectations. Piastri was attacking. Hamilton believed the fast laps behind him were already over. That misunderstanding created the investigation. Hamilton explained that he had been the first driver released onto the circuit. From his perspective, everyone else had followed behind him, so he believed the other drivers had already completed their laps. That assumption is important. Hamilton was not describing a deliberate attempt to block Piastri. He was describing a moment where the information inside the Ferrari did not match the reality approaching from behind. Hamilton said, "Everyone came out behind me. I was the first out, so I thought everyone had finished their lap." That sentence reveals his entire mental picture. He believed the danger had passed. He believed the final attacks were complete. He believed he could move slowly without destroying another driver's lap. But Piastri had not finished. The McLaren was coming quickly, and according to Hamilton, the radio warning arrived far too late. He said, "I was told literally when he was at the apex behind me, so I had no idea he was coming." That is the sentence Ferrari may now have to defend, because if the warning truly arrived when Piastri was already at the apex behind Hamilton, then the driver had almost no time to react. At Formula 1 speed, information delivered 1 second late can be useless. The driver hears the message. His brain processes it. His eyes search the mirrors. His hands decide where to move the car. By then, the faster driver may already be alongside. Imagine standing in the middle of a narrow hallway while someone runs toward you from behind. You do not hear the footsteps. Then, just as the runner reaches you, someone says, "Move." The warning is technically given, but it arrives too late to prevent the danger. That is Hamilton's defense. He did not know. He was not expecting Piastri. The team warned him only when the McLaren was already there. But Piastri's version makes the incident sound far more serious. He said, "I saw him from the start line and kind of watched him, expecting him to get out of the way, and I watched him basically all the way up until I nearly hit him." That description creates a completely different image. Piastri did not discover Hamilton at the final second. He saw the Ferrari from the start line. He watched it. He expected it to move. And as he continued toward turn 1, Hamilton remained in the way. That expectation matters. In qualifying, the faster driver assumes the slower car will receive information and create space. The driver on the preparation lap normally checks mirrors, listens to the radio, and avoids the racing line. Piastri believed Hamilton would do exactly that, so he continued. But the Ferrari did not disappear from his path. The gap closed. The speed difference became more dangerous. And according to Piastri, the moment continued until he almost hit Hamilton. That is why the FIA investigation is so serious. This was not only about losing time. It was about the possibility of contact between two cars moving at very different speeds. One driver was preparing, the other was attacking. One expected the track behind to be clear. The other expected the car ahead to move. Both expectations failed, and turn 1 became the meeting point. The FIA now has to separate several questions. Did Hamilton impede Piastri? Could Hamilton reasonably have known the McLaren was approaching? Did Ferrari warn its driver early enough? Did Hamilton have enough time to move safely after receiving the message? And did the incident materially affect Piastri's final qualifying attempt? Those questions sound similar. They are not. Hamilton may have had no intention of blocking Piastri, but intention is not always enough to avoid a penalty. A driver can impede another car without deliberately trying to do it. The stewards will look at the effect. They will examine the positioning of the Ferrari, the speed difference, the timing of the radio message, the visibility available to Hamilton, and the amount of time Piastri lost. That is where this investigation could become painful for Ferrari. Hamilton's explanation may reduce the sense of blame, but it does not automatically erase the obstruction. If the FIA concludes that Piastri's lap was compromised, Hamilton's second place could be at risk. And second place matters enormously. Hamilton was not starting in the middle of the grid. He was on the front row. He was only 12 thousandths behind Norris. From that position, he had a direct opportunity to attack the McLaren before the first corner. A grid penalty could remove that advantage before the race even begins. That would change everything. From second, Hamilton can challenge Norris immediately. He can use the inside or outside line. He can pressure the pole sitter into defending. He can fight for clean air. He can influence the strategy of the entire Grand Prix. Move him backwards, and the race becomes completely different. He may start behind cars that are difficult to overtake. He may enter turn 1 in traffic. He may have to protect the tires while following closely. He may lose the clean air that made Ferrari look so dangerous. At the Hungary, those consequences become even more severe. This circuit does not make recovery easy. The corners arrive in long sequences. A faster car can become trapped behind a slower one. The disturbed air from the car ahead reduces grip. The front tires begin to slide. Temperatures rise. And the driver spends more time attacking the dirty air than attacking the opponent. It is like trying to run through a narrow room filled with people. You may be faster than everyone, but speed means nothing when there is no space. That is why Hamilton's front row position carried so much value. He had already done the hardest part. He had placed the Ferrari beside Norris. He had given himself a chance to control the first lap. But the FIA investigation threatened to take that control away. And the most painful part is that Hamilton had come so close to pole. 12 thousandths. That margin should have created excitement. Instead, it created vulnerability. Because a driver who starts second by half a second may feel he was simply beaten. A driver who starts second by 12 thousandths knows the result could have gone either way. Hamilton had enough speed to win the qualifying battle. He had enough pace to challenge McLaren. Ferrari had looked strong throughout the weekend. Then one traffic incident placed all of that under review. That is the emotional center of the story. The Ferrari was fast enough. Hamilton was fast enough. But the final outcome may depend on what happened while he was driving slowly. And that contradiction is brutal. Qualifying is supposed to reward maximum speed. Hamilton's danger came during a moment of minimum speed. He did not lose the front row because of a poor corner. He may lose it because he was in the wrong place during someone else's lap. But before assigning blame, there is another layer. Hamilton's radio warning appears central to the investigation. Formula One drivers rely heavily on their engineers during qualifying. The mirrors are small. The cars behind may approach rapidly. The driver cannot always judge who is on a fast lap and who is preparing. So the team becomes another set of eyes. The engineer watches timing information. The engineer tracks gaps. The engineer warns the driver. Fast car approaching. One car behind. Push lap behind. Those messages allow the driver to move before the danger arrives. When the message is late, the system breaks. Hamilton says the warning came when Piastri was already at the apex behind him. If that is supported by the radio recording, Ferrari may face difficult questions. Why was the warning delayed? Did the team misread Piastri's lap? Did communication fail? Was Hamilton given enough information to avoid the incident? The source does not provide those answers, so they cannot be invented. But the timing of the warning is clearly part of Hamilton's defense, and it may become the difference between a driver error and a team failure. The stewards do not always treat those situations identically. A driver may still receive a sporting penalty even if the team's communication created the problem. The driver is the person on the circuit. But the FIA can examine the full context. What did Hamilton know? When did he know it? What could he realistically have done? And would moving suddenly have created an even greater danger? That final question matters. Once Piastri was already close, Hamilton could not simply throw the Ferrari offline without checking the space. A sudden movement could have caused contact. The safest action at the final moment may have been different from the safest action several seconds earlier. That is why early communication is so important. The team must prevent the emergency before the cars are almost together. Hamilton's defense is essentially that the emergency reached him too late. Piastri's argument is that the Ferrari remained in his path long enough to destroy the attempt. Both can be true. Hamilton may genuinely have had no warning. Piastri may genuinely have been blocked. The FIA must decide how responsibility is assigned when one driver causes the effect without intending the cause. That is where the investigation becomes more than a simple argument between two drivers. It becomes a test of team communication. Ferrari had the speed to fight for pole, but speed is useless if the team cannot manage traffic. The final qualifying session is crowded. Drivers slow down to prepare tires. They create gaps. They look for clean air. Every team tries to release its car at the perfect time. Then several drivers reach the same part of the circuit with incompatible plans. One is cooling. One is accelerating. One is starting a lap. One is finishing. That is when the engineer becomes critical. The driver cannot manage the entire circuit alone. He needs accurate information. Hamilton believed everyone had finished. Piastri had not. That is the failure the FIA must now examine. And for Piastri, the frustration was immediate. He saw Hamilton from the start line. He expected movement. He continued watching. The Ferrari stayed there. That waiting itself can damage a lap. A driver approaching turn 1 needs full concentration. He should be thinking about braking.